All right, let's start this final lecture. That is the third installment of clinical interventions. We have obviously talked a while back about brain health. We've talked about psychological health, and your CBT presentations were all about psychological health. And then I shared my own protocols recently in a lecture. And now we're going to talk about relational health and what that is all about. It's brief conceptually, and it's the heaviest, deepest, most important treatment related to psychological difficulties and the effects of trauma and toxic stress. So with relational health, it all starts with attachment theory in the last century and object relations theory. They're really the beginning of like talking about relationships, at least in Western society. And then what we have is a huge input and contribution from the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, which starts off with serve and return, like between parent and child, typically between mother and child, where the mother gazes with a smile and the child gazes back with a smile, and there's a bond. There's a bond going on, and it's a mutual bond. Like early in the baby's life, there's not a lot coming back to the parent yet, but pretty quickly, maybe 3 months or something, there's this mutuality that happens, and the bonding is getting tighter and tighter between parent and child. And in their research, they say relationships are the active ingredient in building resilience, meaning like healthy, really caring, loving relationships help the human be more resilient to stress, whether it's traumatic or toxic stress. Then we have the Harvard longitudinal study. Again, Harvard both, but anyway, they're both great research and great studies. This one is amazing. It's well over 75 years of a study with well over 700 men. It started off with white sort of men, not sort of white men, and then later on included men of color and then families and women. But what they found, like, when they started off, I think it was in the 30s, and they did a study year after year after year checking in with the men. And what they found is over all that time, the warmth of relationships throughout life has the greatest positive impact on life satisfaction. And what that means is that those caring relationships that men had meant more to their life satisfaction than their money, their status, their power, their prestige, and everything else. So a lot of these men had a lot of power and prestige and a lot of money, and others didn't. But within the entire cohort, studied over decades, over and over again, it's warm relationships that caused the greatest life satisfaction. One of the best studies we have to prove to us we don't need money to be happy. We don't need power and prestige to be happy. We don't need status and position. We need warm, caring relationships. The last thing that was very influential to me, like the year after I graduated in 99, and then in 2000, I went to this conference for a weekend about the relational model, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, but it emphasized the increased capacity for engaging in mutually empathic and empowering connection. So the mutuality word is a big one in their work and their research and their treatment protocol, and it isn't something I'll be sharing with you soon. Now, in the module, you will see the video from the Robert Waldinger, anyway, related to the Harvard study, the longitudinal study. So please watch that. You'll get great information and great background on what they did. It'll inform you a lot. So please watch that in the module, whether it's now and come back to the lecture or afterwards. The next thing I want to emphasize is that the relational model, like I talked about just a second ago in the book, The Healing Connection, and again, this was developed at the Stone Center and Wellesley College. And it really was developed by women and basically for women to begin with, because of the psychological research before that was mostly done by men. And it was very male dominated and talk about relationships like at all. So what they emphasize here is this increased capacity for engaging in mutually empathic and growth fostering relationships is their line. I've changed it a bit for my own practice, but this is really huge for understanding the importance of mutuality and great relationships. What you can do is you can go to the module and watch the video that I created for the other class, 661, I'm teaching this summer. That gives you a whole lot more detail about the relational model, what they put together, and what it's all about. I strongly recommend watching that to understand that as well. Now moving on to, these are treatment protocols that I utilize with my clients all the time. And it's all about mutually caring relationships. And I talk about this again every day with my clients to boost their health and happiness and self-esteem and self-confidence and their resilience to stress, all kinds of stress. It begins with serve and return, again, between the infant and the parent, usually the mother. That's where mutually caring relationships begin. So the definition, when I talk about this with my clients all the time, are these three parts, three very, very simple parts of a very healthy, strong, mutually caring relationship with somebody else. And whether they're someone you like a lot or you love, I tell my clients the mutually caring relationship is what you're looking to maintain, to create and maintain. The first thing is we care about each other. We have a true affection. It isn't fake. It isn't like unsubstantiated. It isn't like it's real. It's a real affection between you. Again, you really like each other a lot or love each other. We really care about each other. The next is we believe in each other. There's a non-judgmental acceptance of one another. There's no judgment there. There may be and there are judgment of actions or behaviors, but not about self. Total non-judgmental acceptance between the two of you. And the last is we support each other. If I'm there for you, if you need me, you're there for me if I need you. And the support can be anything from like, oh my God, that is great, to oh my goodness, that is awful. But it's a total support ability. Like you knock out everything else in your life and you support that person when they need you. Those three things make a mutually caring relationship incredibly effective, great for well-being, essential for well-being and happiness, and also great and essential for resilience. Now, the next thing, and this is a pretty big one, is the relational spectrum, something I've developed in the past year, my understanding of relationships and relational capacity. And it's to know that we're all on this spectrum. Every human on the planet is on this spectrum. Now, on the left-hand side, I've got mutually caring. And mutually caring relationships and that ability is on a spectrum. Way over on the left where the arrow ends is like incredibly great ability and skills for mutually caring relationships. Just unbelievable. And everybody knows it, everybody feels it from them, and just incredibly great at mutually caring. And then within that spectrum, it's like, better, best, kinda, from left to right, anywhere in that spectrum of mutually caring relationships and those abilities and those skills. On the right-hand side of the spectrum are transactional. And they take us all the way over to the right-hand side, a fully transactional human. By the way, all relationships are built over time in the person's relational life. And so if you have a lot of caring and mutually caring relationships, that's what you naturally do. If you have a lot of transactional relationships and harmful, abusive and neglectful, there's where you end up. So again, with transactional, all the way on the right are people who are completely narcissistic. It's just narcissistic. It's all about them. And all they want from the other people is what they can get out of them. Again, mutually caring is mutually loving, and the transactional is there's no love, there's no care. It's what can I get out of you? And again, we're all on this spectrum somewhere, and it can fluctuate with different situations and people, but we're all on there somewhere, or maybe light in the middle, or way over in mutually caring, way over on transactional. But what I try to do with my clients is help them understand that about their relationships. And if they have really transactional people in their life, I basically tell them, you can't do anything about that. That person has to realize there's something they want to change and then go get help to change it. And typically people way over in transactional, they're never going to see there's something wrong. They're never going to notice it. And they're probably never going to get treatment. It's possible, but it's unlikely, especially with the people extremely transactional. And people with narcissistic personality disorder are extremely transactional. People with antisocial personality disorder are extremely transactional. In fact, the people with antisocial, typically called psychopaths in our world, basically are fully self-centered, fully narcissistic with cruelty. Not only do they want everything for themselves, but they'll harm other people to get it. So they're really, really hard to be with. So again, I try to help my clients understand, first of all, how to do mutually caring relationships. And then secondly, how to recognize them and be with those folks, and how to recognize really fully transactional. Not, some people are somewhat transactional, and it's okay. I can work with them probably, but fully, it's really hard to work with them. And I'll tell you, like with an example of me and my wife, I believe we're very good at mutually caring relationships, but we have transactions. Like she does the cooking, I do the cleaning. It's a very clear sort of thing that we do. And it's just within the context, actually, of the mutually caring relationship. So transactions do occur. It's like, where is the person on the spectrum? That matters. Next, within mutually caring relationship is the love model. It's a conveniently acronym LUV, or the love model. We talked about it in the crisis lecture, but the love model is listen, understand, and validate. So it is essential for a psychotherapist to be great at this. But it's great for our clients to learn how to do this. So in the support part of the three parts of a mutually caring relationships is to help your clients understand how to be great at listening, understanding, and validating. And hopefully those people in their life can learn, or they do it already, maybe, to do the same. So listening is like having no agenda of your own. You're just totally listening to the person. Like one of my really good friends, or a great family member friend, or my wife or my kids, it's like, I'm just listening. When they need me, I'm just listening. And then I'm understanding, like if I don't get something, I ask clarifying questions. I want to make sure I understand where they're coming from, and then validate it like, oh my God, that must be difficult, or oh my goodness, that must be great. To listen, understand, and validate. So anytime your clients can learn how to do this in their relationships, they will be better. Anytime a couple. This is unbelievably powerful stuff in any great relationship is the love model. Unbelievably powerful. Like relationships can get so much tighter and stronger when people learn these particular skills as well. Next, I want to talk about relational health when it comes to joy, fear, anger, and sadness. So again, the primary emotions of joy, fear, anger, and sadness. So relationships stimulate the highest joy response. Something else does too, and I'll talk about that in a second. But relationships stimulate the highest joy response a human being can experience. They are also the key to building resilience, as I talked about before a few minutes ago. And it's resilience also to fear, anger, and sadness. So a person with a whole lot more joy in their life, more causes or things that stimulate the joy response, will be much more resilient to fear, anger, and sadness. That isn't always the case. A person with great relationships can still go through toxic stress, like a job thing or a financial thing, and oh my God, that builds up. You got a big aim, you got to treat that kind of thing. But typically, we are more resilient, much more resilient in the face of like a big enemy, much more resilient when there are these warm, caring, mutually caring relationships going on. The other part about this is relationships and the brain, which is really important. There's not a lot of research on this, and it really says where we're at. We talk more about pathology, and we research more pathology than we do in terms of like the positive aspects of mutually caring relationships. So healthy relationships activate in the brain those feel-good chemicals. You've probably heard about them or read about them, but anyway, the feel-good chemicals are typically described as oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, and the endorphins. So when we are experiencing a great joy response, these chemicals or some combination of them is what's going on to give us the feeling of joy, because it's that interaction of those chemicals with the body, mostly the chest area, to give us the feelings of joy and happiness like that. And what's amazing too, of course, is that this gives us more resilience to the cortisol released from toxic stress. So again, toxic stress is continuous cortisol causing a big Amy, maybe a small hippo. But these chemicals, the feel-good chemicals, can give us more resilience to that as well. And I think, again, there's so much more research to be done on that. Next, the final slide in this is something I talk to my clients all the time about. I discovered this like about 20 years ago or something like that. And I talk to everybody about this all the time because they activate the highest fear, the highest joy responses are purpose and connection. And really, it's better to say purposes, plural, and connections, plural. So purpose isn't something like, I gotta be a rocket scientist to be happy. No, that never works. Those sort of things are just temporary joy responses to achieve like an educational status or income status or this and that, all that kind of stuff. They're temporary. Purpose, purposes are about what a person loves doing. They get the most joy from doing, which could be hiking and skiing and fishing and hunting and golf or tennis or bingo or, card games. I mean, club act, whatever. Purposes are things you love doing. So I highlight that and I try to help my clients highlight that and have them and maintain them. Their purposes in life, their everyday purposes. They give us a huge joy response by doing our purposes all the time. Connections are mutually caring relationships. We already talked about that. But that combination of purposes and connections, or purpose and connection, is where I always see my clients being the healthiest, the happiest, the best well-being, and the most resilient. Is that specific combination. Okay. Hope this lecture helps. Look forward to your responses in the discussions, and we will go from there.